It is 7 o'clock. I'll call this meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move. Go ahead, Eric.
To approve the agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Pershman
I'll second.
and a second by Councilmember Welch. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. I don't know that we have anyone here for community comment this evening. Presentations and reports. Tonight we have Commissioner John Fahey. Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Good to be here once again. Just a few updates I want to share with you. One of them is Highway 212, the next project from Cologne to NYA. We awarded that bid. We officially will be awarding it tomorrow morning to Mathewitz Construction. They did the section from Carver to Cologne. So we're very excited, and the bids came in about 7% under what we had estimated. So that has enabled the county to not inject, because of all the funding sources that we have secured with MnDOT, federal funds, et cetera, that the county will not be putting any sales tax funds into that project. And that's a big win-win for all of us, and we'll be able to take those funds now and put it into Highway 5. You'll hear more about Highway 5, but 212, basically we're going to start in July, and the original focus will be in the Bungards area. There'll be a new bridge at Bungards on County Road 51, which will go north-south, and then with all of the swamp area to the east of Bungards. We're going to dig that all up, and so you'll see a lot of work in that area to begin with. And then the traffic will start to shift to the new highway alignment probably in November of 2025. And then from April 2026 through October of 2026, we'll be working on the other lane, and then we'll start to shift that traffic. So ultimately, we want to be completed by the end of 2026. And then speaking of Highway 5, the grand plan is to make that a 4-lane from State Highway 41, just east of the Arboretum, all the way to the Dairy Queen on the west side of Victoria. And one of the obstacles that we've ran into is the rusty patch bee. And it's been on the news, but the rusty patch bumblebee is a native species of bumblebee in North America, and it's distinguished by its distinctive rusty patch. And these bees are vital pollinators, and they do nest near and around the Arboretum. And so we're going to have some challenges with putting a new bridge right through kind of the edge of the Arboretum where currently Highway 5 is. So you'll hear more about the bee, and we'll just continue to work through that. But we're in the preliminary design stage now, and that will run through the end of 2024, with the final design being approved in 2025, and then construction starting in 2025 through all the way of 2027. But now with the good news on 212, we're going to allocate additional funds to continue to move that project up on the timeline with MnDOT. So that's exciting news. The Paradise Commons, it's the new entertainment center at Lake Waconia Regional Park. If you get the opportunity, we're having a summer bash grand opening this Friday. It starts at 3 o'clock and it goes to 10:30 in the evening. There'll be music, but it'll be a great opportunity if you haven't had a chance to go see that facility. It's a great facility. And so come out, and currently the facility has indoor seating for 80 people with the access to the different type of shelters. And then it has a serving kitchen with window and a counter. And it has private indoor restrooms and personal care room. And for example, we've booked already some pretty large weddings. And what they'll do is set up a big tent outside the facility. And then they'll use the facility itself for probably the personal care needs of the wedding party. So if you have the opportunity to go, please stop by and look at it, even during the day, because it's staffed now by county staff, and you can go and just walk through the building anytime. A lot of discussions about elections coming up this year, and the county has created a new election integrity page. Myself, I've gotten a lot of questions, and I just send people right to this page on the county website. And there's a lot of, for frequently asked questions and resources, there's a link to the state of Minnesota frequently asked questions, and there's other links in there that talk about the equipment and the software. And I've been talking to the various townships in my district, and they get questions all the time, and we just have them direct those individuals to the county website. And it's really been informative. And that way, a lot of people can get the same message, and it's the message that the county would like to have sent out there based on the state statutes, et cetera. Probably true and dear to the residents is the flood update. There was a new one that came out today, and it's currently at about 25.33 feet in action stage, and it's expected to reach minor flood stage of 25 to 26 feet by tomorrow afternoon and moderate stage by 28 feet by Friday night. There is a projected closure of County Road 11 by Thursday, and then possibly Highway 41 by this weekend, just with the amount of water that's coming from the west. That's just an update. And then Brent had reached out to me with the mosquito control and the mosquito problem or concerns that individuals have. And so it was great to connect that. And I'm fortunate to sit on the Minnesota Mosquito Control Board. And they did some Facebook posts on what's happening. And we just have to continue to grin and bear it with mosquitoes.
And the procedure for that is to file a complaint online through the mosquito control
Correct.
district's website when you have a concern, right? That's a separate taxing entity outside of the county or the city, and that you need to go straight to them, despite us advocating on
Yes. Yep.
citizens' behalf.
Yes, correct, Mayor. That's definitely the way to do it.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
All right. Any questions for Commissioner Fahey?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
It doesn't necessarily pertain to us, but for Highway 5 going through Victoria, if you're going to 4-lane, how does that look for downtown?
It's my understanding, Christy, that the last piece of it is going to be the Floyd intersection, and how they do all of that, if it's just condensed to 4 lanes with different type of traffic, left and right turn lanes, et cetera. And then as you go west, that bridge no longer has a true purpose because the railroad is gone. And so the thought is to take that bridge completely down and then change that overpass over the trail.
Okay.
But that's the
Yeah, it's a
tricky
little tight in
piece.
there, so I didn't know, are you planning to take any houses or buildings out?
My understanding, no.
Okay.
But
Okay. And then my only other question is on 212 between here and Cologne, coming eastbound, there's some pretty good dips in that highway. What's the plan for those?
that is going to be dug up this summer, 900 some feet on that south eastbound lane. We're going to dig that all up, and that Mathewitz is on the hook for taking care of all that. Because if you remember, that where the old Buckentine farm was,
Okay.
there used to be a big barn there, and that was a really low spot.
Was it?
That,
Okay.
that ground just continued to settle
To settle,
more than
okay.
they imagined.
All right, that's all my questions.
Great. Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. All right, I think, well, let's do the consent agenda, and then I promised Mr. Schultz we would get him in here sooner rather than later. So we have no public hearings this evening. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Mock,
Second?
second by Councilmember Welch. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, Mr. Schultz, would you like to come up and talk about flooding real quick?
Here, you want to come up to? I'll sit down. Sure. Oh,
You're gonna have to get real close.
It's already cozy.
I'll sit over here.
Super excited to see how this works out.
Yeah. I'll give her a minute till that comes up.
I thought it would just flow well after the commissioner's update with flooding. Oh, I know.
That was an expectation,
I did not
wasn't
mean
it?
that.
So, elaborating a little bit what the commissioner was just saying about what's going to be happening with the flood. We do anticipate, and I actually pulled this off of the 2018 sheets that we had. It's going to be very similar to it. We're looking at 30 feet. Right now it did move up. It was at 29 this morning, and they bumped it up by the weekend to be at 30. So if you have the graph that's on here, that translates over on the left-hand column. What we're thinking is, since Wednesday is a holiday and it would be hard to get materials, on Wednesday, we'd like to close the road off on Main Street on Thursday, but it won't be a total close off. We're gonna have to close it while we do construction and build up that part of the levee, but then the lanes will be reopened. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. It's just purely for making machines move around and dump trucks dumping material. But if you can move to.
So a closure during business hours, basically.
Correct. It's gonna affect the Motor Cafe by, their parking is right down there by the levee, and then their garbage cans and stuff are down there. We'll have to ask them to move that and maybe move it up by the utility building.
Have you talked to them at all yet?
I have not, so I was gonna approach them tomorrow.
Okay.
I just, maybe if I could get a contact from Brent, or if somebody has one, if they're not down there. But this is what it's gonna look like. It's gonna be identical to it. So we're just extending the levee. We're gonna close it off in those sections where potential floodwaters could go through. And that way it keeps the lanes open. But during that, we will need to have some safety by closing it. And we can just, if it's all right, I'll talk to Brent about it tomorrow, about how we're plan on doing a detour around there just for a few hours till it's done. But that's what it's gonna look like. We do already have the materials. We have the plastic. We have probably actually 60,000 sandbags that we have left over from previous ones, but this doesn't scare me at all. You should never take it lightly, because if you do have a break in the levee, that's never good. But as far as the predictions and the way it looks like it's gonna rise, it's giving us plenty of time to get to this point, so.
Paul, we've had to close off Third Street Bridge and Main Street Bridge completely in the past.
Correct.
What do we have to get to have that be? What height here do we have to get to?
Oh, so actually it is written on here, there is Third Street Bridge elevation, and we'll never get to that, because that's 34 feet.
Okay.
With this, where it's predicted, that would have to jump up pretty close to what it was in 65.
Okay.
So, I would say that this is gonna mirror just the same as 18 and 19, it got to the same, and in 21 it got to the same too.
Okay.
So,
What was the year that we built up the levee? And we closed
that was
it?
around
15?
2010 to 15, somewhere in there, yeah.
Okay.
Because we took that material from the Fleet Farm, Levi Griffin Road at that time.
Greg was mayor.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
So we don't anticipate having to fully close these bridges unless it keeps
No.
raining?
no.
Unless it
Don't
rains
say
for the
it.
next, like,
Stop.
5 weeks. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Like I said, but we'll have to keep monitoring their prediction, the National Weather Service's prediction. If this does go up higher, then of course we'll have to modify that.
Because tell me again, what did you say it was supposed to reach by Thursday, Friday?
30 feet.
And so if I'm
On the
looking
left hand.
here now,
Main Street.
Main Street needs to be closed.
Yeah.
Okay. At 31? I look over?
Yep, at 31.
And that's,
Literally.
That was where we totally put a whole
that's the
levee
full
across.
closure is
Right,
31?
right. So now, since that bridge had gotten changed, we use those, if you can bring up a picture of the. So if you can see that, those wing walls that are on the bridge, we didn't have them in the previous floods before that. So when the bottom of the street was actually at the elevation, it could flow right into the street, because we just had J barriers there.
Okay,
And now with this, we use those wing walls as actually flood control too.
okay.
Well, a lot of times when it floods, being a small town, a lot of folks ask, what can we do? And especially folks who've been here long enough to remember whatever that year is that we can't remember.
That we sandbagged,
Right.
yeah.
That where we sandbagged last. No, not 65, but when it was, yes, but we certainly have some folks who remember that too. But
Oh, in 93 and 97?
no, I'm thinking
No,
more
in
recently.
the
that-
2000s, we
2000.
were up sandbagging at Lions Park,
Yeah.
filling
So-
them there,
Yeah.
around here.
What can folks do? I know we don't have a tremendous need for sandbaggers.
Right, and we actually created 100 sandbags today already with just seasonal staff.
Okay.
I don't think anything is needed, and actually, maybe staying away while we're doing it would be even better.
Okay.
Watch from afar, maybe.
I anticipated that would be the
Yeah.
answer, but I wanted to hear you say it. Thank
Yep.
you. Okay. What can we do to help you?
I don't think there's anything, actually. I'll just
You
be
need
in
to fill
communication
sandbags or
with.
anything?
Oh, you opened the door for me.
I know.
I'm sorry. Nothing right now. No.
All right. I know you guys have been putting in some long hours and had a weather-related call out last week, so thank you guys for everything you're doing. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Back onto the agenda, business items, the 2014 building project, fire station and public services. Mr. Merrick?
Yep, good evening, Mayor and Council. So we have Wold Architects and Engineers here tonight to review the plans and specifications for the 2024 capital building and maintenance project. It involves three primary scopes: the renovation for turnout gear storage. As we remember, as you may recall, we're wanting to get our turnout gear storage out of the main apparatus bay to protect it from carcinogens. A new roof at the facility at 801 Jonathan Carver Parkway, along with HVAC units at that same location, which houses the Fire Department and Public Services Department. I did do a call out. In recent weeks, we've also discovered, or not discovered, but explored costs to do some additional pavement work behind the facility that we do as a additional kind of project. Areas currently in gravel, but with the turnout gear location moving to the west side of the building, we want to create some opportunity for some more parking. So Aaron Schmidt and the Public Services staff are going to be working on that as a kind of a separate project, and so we'll be giving you some costs at an upcoming meeting related to that. Apropos, we have Northland here tonight. Tammy Amdahl with Northland, excuse me. So I have some information related to our capital improvement plan bonds, that not to exceed 1.8 million number. Once the city council receives bids for this, which is in July, we'll be able to kind of right size that, and so you'll have some additional detail related to that as the night moves forward. Also, just wanted to call out the city has set aside $175,000 in one-time public safety funding to put toward the project. So with that, I'll call up the presentation from Wold, or if you have it.
Either way, you can do it if you have it.
Oh, sure. And I'll let Joel Dunning and his associate with Wold go over the presentation.
This is Haley O'Connor.
Welcome.
Working with me on the project. We are nearing the end of our design process. I'll start as Brent's calling that up. And can give you a presentation of, very briefly, on the project scope and schedule and our current estimate. So really, it's a fairly simple project. If you want to go to the next slide. The floor plan of the fire station, you can see the darker area kind of in the middle. There's the larger turnout gear room that is being built. We're building kind of 3 rooms into the apparatus bay to enclose that space so that that can be separated from the rest of the atmosphere of the diesel exhaust and the other or potentially harmful materials that might be coming back from a structure fire. So the darker elements around the perimeter of that turnout gear room are new turnout gear lockers. The existing turnout gear lockers are being repurposed in the middle of the room, so we're adding quite a bit of storage. The firefighters will be able to have multiple uniforms or multiple sets of gear, or facilitate growth for more firefighters in the future. Where that turnout gear room went into to the right, into the existing building that's kind of hatched around it, that's where the existing gear wash and SCBA storage activities happen. So by displacing that, we're building those two functions out into the apparatus bay as well and enclosing them. So the self-contained breathing apparatus will have the compressor to the fill station to fill those bottles, 3-compartment sink to clean everything and sanitize it after use, and then storage racks to be able to hold those filled bottles between being deployed out. And then the bottom room is an essential piece. The gear wash room and decontamination room is, as people come back from a structure fire or any sort of environment, it's a place to clean all the equipment. The washer, dryer will be in there, that kind of an industrial washer to be able to really get all the contaminants out of gear. The gear dryer, one rack will go in there that exists today, and then a second rack that'll be purchased will go in there as well to allow all of that to happen outside of the environment of the apparatus bay. The storage that's currently happening on the floor, I think we talked about this at our last design update, that's getting displaced against the old wall that's on the far left, where all the turnout gear currently, all those lockers are currently mounted on the wall. They'll be taken down, and the storage of different equipment that can be out in the apparatus bay will be up against that wall. So that's really the inside of the building. The roof on the next page, hopefully this shows up well enough, but the roof is, we're replacing the roof. The base bid that we are detailing out calls for reusing the insulation. We are currently in the process, I believe, of getting a couple of core samples to make sure that, confirm that the insulation is usable. We know there are some areas near, how do I describe it? About 40% from the left, there's a place where the roof drops down about 18 inches or 2 feet. And there's been some water infiltration, some leaks in that area. You can see it inside the building coming down the walls. So we know that there's some water that's gotten in, so there might be some isolated areas that might need some insulation replaced. But we're also going to be getting an alternate price for replacing all the insulation. So there's an option that will be able to be considered by the council. And before we take bids, we'll have those core samples to know the condition of the existing insulation. Along with the re-roofing of putting new membrane on, we are going to be fixing that condition at the high-low roof by building up a little bit of a parapet. And what happens right now is kind of the opposite side of that central area that's 60% over from the left. That's the peak of the roof right now. And so water's running across that central section and then water falling over that 2-foot drop and then going all the way to the far left edge where there are 3 scuppers that go to downspouts and lead down that south side of the building. So we're actually putting a parapet up, constructing that out of wood blocking and running the roof membranes over the top of it, and then putting insulation in that slopes the opposite direction so that that central section will now be all flowing to the north into those overflows on the north side. And we don't have that problem of kind of the waterfall over the height difference.
Will that be visible from like a street view?
No, it'll still be under the parapet height of the street facing and the back facing. It'll be just about the exact same height as that parapet. The other piece to the scope that is really timed out well with this re-roof is replacing the 5 rooftop mechanical units. So there's 2 makeup, jumped the gun a little.
Sorry.
In the central section, there's 3 rooftop units. that are original to the building, and then just onto the right portion and just onto the left portion from the center, there's some makeup air units that are also original. So they'd have to remove those to put the new roof on. It's a great time to coordinate all the contractors at once to put new units on, and if the new ones are slightly different shape, then they're redoing all the curbs anyway that they set on, so as part of flashing them in. So it's a good opportunity to update that portion of the building as well. Now we can go. Overall schedule, we're there in the star in the middle of the June month. We are here to get your approval to go out to bid. We still have a few more details to work on wrapping up on our drawings, but by the end of next week, I think that everything will be completely ready to go. And so July will basically be our bidding period, be able to come back in end of August or middle August council meeting for award of construction contracts. We usually recommend about a 2-month lead time for the contractor to get all their paperwork together, their insurance, and then order materials as well. And so we expect that we wouldn't mobilize any sooner than October, and we want to make sure that the open house that's scheduled, the annual open house at the fire station on the 8th, can still happen. So we're writing in our specifications that no work on site can happen until, I think it's the 14th of October, the Monday after that open house. So you won't see activity until that mid-October, but that's plenty of time to get the roofing materials and get all of their submittals done, and I'm sure contractors will be motivated to try and get the roof done before it gets too cold. The interior remodeling, it always takes a little bit of a time. Just you have one trade out to do some demolition, and then the next trade comes out, and so on. And no matter how big or small the project, there's a certain minimum time. So we've kind of envisioned that there's about a 4-month construction process that we're outlining for the overall project after that 2-month lead time. Quick update on the next page on the budget. We do an estimate at the end, send out to a third party and a consultant that we use on all of our projects, used to our drawings, used to what our specifications call out. Have them take a look at it to get a final cost estimate. We are very close to what our original budget was. We would prefer having more contingency because it is a remodeling. We don't know exactly what we'll find. Like I mentioned, the wet insulation is a possibility. We'd usually recommend going out to bid with about a 5% contingency, which would be about $80,000. But I think that's where we're in a good position to get the real numbers before we finalize what the bonds are. And like you heard on the road project, fall is a good time to bid, and there's a lot of contractors looking after the summer slam is done to keep their people busy through the fall and winter, and it's a good project for that. So we're hoping for competitive bids as well. And then future steps, I think, is the next slide. So like I mentioned, in about a week, we'll issue the construction documents, bid opening on July 25th. That gets you the number so that the bond sale can be authorized. Gives a little bit of time before award of construction contracts at that August 19th council meeting. As I mentioned, the open house on the 8th, construction mobilization, and then looking mid-February for occupancy. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Questions? I have a few.
Go ahead.
Let's go first. So if we find that the installation isn't reusable, and you said that you were going to have some alternative numbers for that, I mean, can we keep part of the installation, and only do part of it? What does that look like when you're getting prices on what would be to insulate the whole roof?
Sure. The core samples that we'll get will give us a spot check at certain locations.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we won't know everything. It's kind of like taking soil borings before you're doing a building project. You're drilling into the ground one place, but you have stripped foundations everywhere, so you might run into lots of debris or other things that you don't anticipate. That's part of the reason to think about budgeting a higher contingency. We did estimate a full replacement of insulation, and that was $120,000.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, if we get the core samples back in the next week or two and find that all of them throughout the roof say that we should replace the insulation, then the project will be over what we've budgeted so far. Some of that is coming in and fixing that, the change in the slope of the roof and the drainage to fix that water leak problem added to the project. We are already planning on new insulation in that area, but if there are some other, or adding insulation in that area, I should say. If there are other places then that needs to be re-roofed, the worst it will be for new insulation would be $120,000. But our approach is to try and go little by little, minimize the impact.
Okay. Brent, let's just say it's 120,000. What does that do for all of this? What are we?
Yeah, so let me get to the page. So if you look at this budget, this 1.5 million, the city, if you think of that 175,000, that's a deduct from that. So our like true budget, like bonding cost is right around that 1.3. And so when I mentioned that 1.8, that's the cap that you set earlier in the year for the most that you would bond for this. So theoretically, you have close to $500,000. Not that you want to spend that all, but I don't think you're in a position where you won't be able to make decisions based on the bonding amount. It's just a matter of what decisions you want to make.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm sorry,
Go
just so that
ahead.
I understand that, we're bonding for 1.8. So we
You
essentially,
could bond for
Oh,
up
we
to
could.
1.8.
okay, which will TBD.
Yeah, so that's why
Until
we've
August,
really,
whatever the date
thanks
is.
to Tammy's help and Wold's help, and Lynn and her team, we've set this up so that you'll have bids in hand at the end of July, so that when we're getting ready for that August meeting, we'll have a good line of sight to what you want that bid,
Okay.
or what you want that actual bond amount to be that you'll sell for.
Okay, now I remember that, thanks for the refresher.
Yep. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, because no, that's fine. Because our CIP, the 1.8 was our not to exceed. Okay. Great. This is a question for how this is designed, and just so I have an understanding, when we're looking at the actual, if you can flip back maybe to the schematic design, and we have the gear wash station and the decontamination, and then you walk through the SCBA room, and then in to put up the cleaned gear. Is that the right flow? Is that what I'm looking at?
Every room has a door from the bay that you can walk through.
Directly.
So if you're going to the gear clean turnout room, you can get to that, clean the gear, whatnot.
Okay.
And then after your gear is clean, you could then walk through the SCBA room and into where we would hang up our gear.
Okay. Is there a reason that those rooms aren't flip-flopped?
One of the reasons that the team is thinking long-term also, that there's the potential that what is labeled SCBA room might become a hallway that connects across to the other side that's now used by public services. Once public services, if in the future they move out,
Okay.
that would allow firefighters to go back and forth through that hallway, and a SCBA cleaning, the compressor, the sinks, the storage racks, those work much better in a hallway, a circulation hallway, than the gear wash room
Okay.
and the washer and dryer and things like that.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. This is a note for any communications that go out about when this project begins and what we put out to the public. It's probably a good idea to mention when the building was constructed. I think that helps give people a good idea of saying, well, this building is 23 years old or whatever it will be. It tells a good story for why this is important and so much money is going into it. The gravel and paved parking lot area in the back, I don't know, I don't understand what's happening here, because that's gravel right now, right? And is that inside the gates that are back there in the gated area?
Yeah, so right now I would just offer that it's a concept, and so, but yes, and we'll bring more detail to you, but essentially the flow, so right now all the responders respond on the east side of or the south side of the building. And so we are contemplating that the need will be to have responders respond on the west side of the building, because that'll be the closest to this turnout gear space. That's also a space, though, that, as you know, we're short on public services space, where we park a lot of public services vehicles. So we want to explore the idea with the concept of paving some of that space that's inside of that area as a low-cost, high-impact, but we'll have more detail, but we're not prepared to like give you like details on cost, but Aaron and Paul and Callie and Tim are gonna work on that, and if you like it, great, take it. If you don't, throw it on back and we'll do something else.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just, okay.
Go ahead, Tilly.
I have questions. When you come back to us in July with bid numbers, and similar to what Councilmember Mock was saying, as far as like the messaging, for me, it would be helpful to know, like, what are the warranties? What is the, you know,
Yep.
that type of stuff? Just so that when I answer, you know, why we're spending $250,000 in a remodel, $500,000 in a roof, and $500,000 on HVAC, how long should it all last? And
Yep.
just,
Okay,
thank you.
we can have that pulled together as part of our recommendation letter as well.
Yes. Reed?
Just double check the numbers. So the current estimate is for the roof replacement cost, that was assuming we would not need to replace the entire roof, right?
Not need to replace all of the insulation,
Okay.
correct?
Okay. And then, okay. Yeah, that was it.
Eric, anything from you?
Councilmember Mock, I think, addressed my questions. I'd like to hear from my police chief or see my police chief nod in approval.
Fire.
He's
Fire.
fire chief.
Fire chief for the scope.
You do both?
Got demoted there for a
Yeah,
second,
wow.
Callie.
Promoted.
Scope of the project, sorry.
Don't worry, they want a patrol car next.
Yeah, we're looking forward to this project.
And there's, I think, I attended the fire meeting a couple of months ago, and we asked the questions then too, when we had the townships in. This, to me, it sounded like this really does address the needs, the current needs of the fire department, correct?
Yeah, for a
Okay.
gear, so.
Yeah, there wasn't anything on the wish list that we're not addressing with this. All right, thanks.
All right, I just have a couple more questions. One, piggybacking off your insulation question, is the decision to kind of start out with only replacing potentially a fraction of the insulation because to try to, is a cost savings method or because of lack of need potentially? Does insulation last
it's-
in perpetuity?
It does.
Okay.
Part of it is that the original drawings were not exactly what was built. If you look at the original drawings, it shows an L-shaped building and it's rectangular. So we're not quite sure what's there. So step one of doing the core sample is to make sure that what's there is compatible with the new roofing system we're putting on.
Okay.
It's also to double check how wet it is, because if insulation is wet, then it's not going to provide the insulation value. I believe that to meet, when we do a re-roofing, we are required to meet the current energy codes. So we will be adding insulation everywhere. Not only that area where we're changing the slope, we're going to be adding more insulation everywhere to meet the current energy codes.
Okay.
It's a question of, is the existing insulation able to be kept also? And so if it's not wet, it should last longer and don't have to pay for something that's good already.
Okay. My other question, I appreciate the mindfulness of not starting any of this until after the fire department's open house. I would argue that that might be the most popular event in Carver, second only to Steamboat Days. But my question for that is does roof construction happen in late October? Do we have to hope that we don't have as wet of a fall as we do summer?
Roof construction prefers, because the roofers prefer not to be in freezing weather, but this is a fully adhered EPDM roof. So it's going to be mechanically fastened down to the substrate. It's not like a tar roof that is being heated up and mopped down or anything like that. We're scraping away all of the stone ballast that's on the roof today, and going to be adding insulation like I mentioned, and then putting down a EPDM rubber membrane that will be visible, will be easier to see where if there's a leak in the future, or if someone drops a nail, it's not stuck in a bunch of stones and then gets stepped on. You can actually see the roof, and it should have a 20-year warranty on it, to your question, council member. But that could be done year-round.
Okay, great. That
is it for
I have
questions?
one
Yeah,
more.
go ahead.
Okay, so you just said that the plans that we have on file show an L-shaped building, and we have a rectangle building. Do we not have any plans for what this building actually is?
It's, what's on file are close. There was, my
It was an
understanding anecdotally was that the project came in, the original construction came in over budget, and so they worked with the contractor to figure out how to cut back, and they never redid the plans, the drawings.
Okay,
So it was
interesting. Okay.
Wow.
always a little bit of a guess
On
to
the fly
figure out.
engineering
Yeah.
adds to the story.
Yeah.
And the intrigue and the question marks. But, okay, thank you.
We're doing this by the book engineering.
Yeah, good, yeah. You get a
Right.
rectangle.
Thank you, guys. Do you need, let's see, we need a motion for this one.
I will be happy to make a motion to accept plans and specifications for the 2024 capital building project and authorize for the advertisement of bids.
All right, we got a
Second.
motion by Councilmember Mock and a second by Councilmember Welch. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right.
Thank
Keep
you.
going on this.
See you in July.
Thank you, guys. All right, 8.2, the 2024 bond issuance. Ms. Schutte and Ms. Umdahl. Welcome back, ladies.
All right, so I'm actually going to turn this right over to Tammy because I did not prepare anything, so.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor, Council, Tammy Umdahl with Northland Public Finance. You have a resolution before you on your agenda this evening calling for the sale of the Series 2024 A bonds. Also included in your packet was a finance plan related to that. I'm just going to review the executive summary and then take questions. And I'd like to start by the amount that is included in the resolution is $5,875,000. That is an estimate. That may not be the final amount. The presentation that you just went through on the CIP portion of these bonds, you are waiting for more information. Once you have that information, Northland will work with your staff and adjust that. So I want to start with that point. With that said, the bonds are being issued not only to finance the Fire and Public Works Service building, but also to finance utility, water, tower, repainting improvements are also included, as well as capital equipment, all consistent with your plans related to this. The bonds will be general obligation bonds, all portions, so full faith and credit, along with you are pledging tax levy and utility revenue to the water portion. So that'll repay the bonds. With respect to the interest cost included in your finance plan before you, 4.38 is the estimated. Rates are down a little bit since this plan was prepared. These bonds will not be sold until August, so we don't know what that final rate will be, but we would expect it to be in a level that'll be consistent with your finance plans and the projected revenues to repay it. So I would note that. These bonds are proposed to be rated, given the size and the GO pledge, and there's a cost benefit. There's a cost to that rating. City's gone through that process many times. Northland will work with your staff. The current rating being AA with Standard & Poor's, and so they will review that and then either affirm or offer what that rating is. Having reviewed your finances in detail, Northland sees no concern with respect to that rating, but it is a process that staff will go through along with the analyst from S&P. Other comments, I would note in the presentation that was given, that sale date is now going to be August 19th, not the earlier meeting date in August, to leave time for you to affirm exactly how much you want to issue in bonds for the CIP portion. So just a little bit of change from what was previously planned. This will be a competitive sale process. So that morning of August 19th, Northland on your behalf will take bids from underwriters proposing to purchase the bonds. And then we will be here on that evening meeting on August 19th to present those bids, and there will be a resolution for you to consider to award the bonds. With that, Mayor, Council, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions? Yes.
Tammy, I think for some of the council members, this might be their first bond issuance. Can you just talk about bond premium and that process and maybe just get some initial feedback from the council?
Oh, certainly. So in this market, bond market, this has been the case for several years. These bonds are likely to bid be bid with premium. You might say, well, what does that mean, Tammy? That means that the underwriter will actually offer more than the par amount of the bonds in order to get higher coupons, so interest rates on each of those maturities. That simply means if you take that premium and reduce the principal amount, you will end up paying the exact same as if the underwriter had bid at par, but you would end up paying them less in principal based upon whatever the premium amount is and more in interest. And you might say, well, why do they bid it that way? It has to do with investor interest. And each bond maturity, bonds are sold in $5,000 increments, holds its own interest rate. It's not like a mortgage where you lock in one interest rate. Each maturity, and maturity simply means to each February 1 of that year of when those bonds are repaid. You as an issuer have a choice what you do with that premium. You could use it to reduce the principal amount as I just described, or because rates are still relatively low, some communities, if there is a need, meaning you're uncertain with project costs, you can take that premium and instead of reducing the principal amount of the bonds, you deposit it into the construction fund. You could put it into the debt service fund to manage your levy. It is not free money. So if you do that, it's not that the underwriter paid you more. You made the decision, we're going to issue a little bit more than we otherwise would in order to have either the flexibility in the debt service fund or some contingency in the construction fund. Cities handle that differently all the time, but it is your choice. What would happen is we will work with staff to get direction on what you want to do with premium. But I believe why Brent is asking me to talk to you about this now, you do not want a situation where staff gives direction to Northland in the morning with the underwriter and says they're going to use premium to reduce the par amount, and then I'm before you that evening and you say you want to do something different as a council, you would have to reject that bid. You do not want to do that. So that communication early and direction on what you want to do with that premium is important. As we get closer, we can give an estimate to staff on what we think that premium may be bid at given current market conditions to help inform that decision. But oftentimes when you're confident of the cost estimates, most cities would choose to just reduce the principal amount, but that'll be a choice.
And just to follow up, so especially with Dave sitting right there, I can't, as the city manager, poll the council and ask if you want to take the premium. So we don't necessarily have to make a decision tonight, but our past practice has been, doesn't mean it can't change, is that we would typically accept premium unless there's some mitigating circumstance, with the idea that it is contingent, and at worst case, if it's not spent, it goes back toward the debt service for that fund. So it provides extra space if you need it, and if that's not used, it goes back to pay it. If the council wants to consider another strategy, we can put it on a work session agenda. We're just not in the position to get real-time feedback from the council on an issue like this without violating the open meeting law. So if you want to think about that or have questions related to that, now would be a good time to either discuss that or we can bring it back at a work session if you have other ideas.
If we bring it back to a work session, does that put any time constraints on what we're trying to do or push us back at all? No?
Not at all. We could take that direction from staff the morning of August 9th, as late as the morning of August 19th. We prefer to get it a day or two before, but we could take that direction as late as August 19th.
The one caveat is we won't know the parameters if the premium is going to be $10,000 or $80,000.
We can estimate. We can get fairly close as we're closer to that date, but
Correct.
We will not know the exact amount.
Does this affect us if we bond for the full 5,875? Can we not take a premium because it goes over our not to exceed number?
So I'm trying to think of your bond counsel different. I believe that your bond counsel views that you could keep premium, that would be an addition, but we would confirm that.
Okay.
And that would just be on the CIP portion, to Brent's portion. That doesn't, you could do something different on the equipment and the water portion if bond counsel determined you could not keep premium on the CIP portion. And you might say, what do I mean by portion, if I may, Mayor?
Yes, absolutely.
So even though it's one bond that you're issuing, there's three different purposes, we call it, 3 different authorities that you're using. You're using your CIP. You approved the capital improvement plan. That was under a specific statute. You're issuing for equipment. That is under a different statute for bonding authority. And you're issuing utility revenue bonds under a different statute. So when I say purpose, I mean those 3 purposes. But for efficiency, they're all combined into one bond from an underwriter investor standpoint so that you don't incur multiple cost of issuance related to that bond.
And just for a little perspective, if it was related to the equipment, like my line of sight would be like, we already know what those costs are and we've already made those purchases. We're just kind of in queue. But, you know, Joel brought up kind of a good example of like contingency on a building, and especially when you're doing a remodel, there's more at play. You also have that 1.8 number, so there's multiple things that are going on with that. The same as we all recognize with water utilities, when people start digging and looking at things, sometimes things pop up. That doesn't mean you should use bond funds to do that, but I just wanted to give you a perspective of some of the calculus that goes into it. What I've done in the past is if I get a call from Tammy, or in the past it's been with another firm, I'll do like a check with our accounting team, but then my initial response would be to connect with the mayor quick and say, we intend to take this and here's why, following kind of some of the expectations the council has previously set. But we're not in a position, as Tammy had mentioned, to wait until that evening to go back to the underwriter who made the bid. We don't have that kind of length as far as I'm aware.
That is correct.
I don't have any concerns with the premium. Does anyone feel strongly?
No, I don't, yeah.
I have a question just on like the process for like what's going to be asked of us for decisions in the future. So thank you for explaining the 3 different like authorities. If for some reason we don't spend as much as we thought, and maybe whatever one, it might be the CIP. So is that where we'd have to decide if that should go to debt services, or could that go to one of the other 2?
That is a great question. So ultimately where that is defined is in the resolution you'll consider on August 19th. But to answer your question, with the CIP portion, it will need to go into the debt service fund because
That
your
one just
CIP,
has to.
your
Okay.
CIP was more narrowly defined for this project.
Okay.
If you had other projects in your 5-year CIP, when I say CIP, don't think of your normal CIP. I'm referring to the specific statutory plan that you adopted for the fire and public service. And that included that project only. So that would go to debt service. The equipment, while you had plans for certain equipment, if you didn't need all those dollars that you issued, you could use unspent bond proceeds on other equipment.
Okay.
For the water, if you did not need all of the dollars issued for the water tower project, you could use that for any other water capital improvement project, or to use it for debt service.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
welcome.
And then, so I understand it comes back to us in August, and then in September it's issued. Is there anything we should like look for, ask like in August? Is there something that would be like a red flag? Because otherwise I'm really just, I have a lot of trust in the team, and I'm just taking you guys' advice, not, but like.
There's nothing that's coming in September.
The closing on the
Closing.
So is the-
But that's
yeah,
not a
it just-
council
Yeah, it was a
action.
date of delivery.
Yeah.
So on the,
Date of original issue of bond.
is it the 19th?
Yeah.
The morning of the 19th, Tammy and her team will have a process where people will make bids on what they would, coupons, I guess, for the bonds. What you do that evening is just authorize the sale, so that it, from a decision standpoint, there isn't really, other than the amounts, there isn't really any additional decisions. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, and if I may speak to that more broadly, if you have any concerns, this is more broad direction or recommendation to the council, you do not want to find yourself in a position as a city that you reject a bid on bonds. If it was proper and those bonds were bid, for this reason, underwriters remember that. And they have put those dollars, and investors are expecting those bonds to close. So the next time you go to market, are they really going to sell these bonds. I, was going to invest in these. So not that you have every right that evening to reject that bid if I come before you to say, no, we're not going to award it. That is extremely unusual to happen for that reason. You do not want to be in a position that you went through the process and it was properly bid, that you reject that bid.
Okay.
So the 19th, we'll be verifying the amounts, and then after that, it's just a matter of closing.
That is correct. So it normally, like any closing, takes a few weeks after you award it. So that evening, there's actually a contract that will be signed that evening or by 9 a.m. And because an underwriter wants to know that you've awarded it and those some $5 million are going to close as planned.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so just so I'm clear, I think we are all in favor of bond premium.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Do you have the direction you need?
Hmm?
Okay. All right, then I think we need a motion if nobody else has any questions.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 121-24, providing for the competitive negotiated sale of 5,875,000 general obligation bonds series 2024A.
All right, we've got a motion by Councilmember Pershman,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you for your help. All right, let's see. Now, let's go back to, thank you guys, to the 2025 budget kickoff. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So for the tens and tens of people who are watching from home, this was an issue that was, or this is an item that was on our work session agenda that we just ran out of time with. So we will pick it up right now.
Just have to fix my display settings. They're different in here, so here we go. All right, we were just about done. I did kind of cruise through the end, so if anybody has any questions, I'll just kind of recap here. Going through, I think got caught up on this mechanic talk, but I'm going to go through this slide again because I did really rush through this one. So we have some capital improvement contributions planned. A parks capital contribution. If you remember, we're going to start making a $25,000 capital parks contribution and trying to increase that so we can really bulk up that fund so we can start making some improvements to our parks that we already have. Not just continue to build new parks, but improve the ones that we have. Fire department capital contribution of $50,000 around there. We'll tweak that number as we get closer. And then public services equipment purchases. Right now we have a vehicle and a hot patch trailer. That could change as we get really deep into the budget.
I have a question about, can you go back, please? Brent, I know that Paul has gone, so I'm not sure if a hot patch trailer, is this new, or do we have one now that is on its way out? And it says in the vehicle, can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, I don't know what they'll, from memory. I mean, this is just what's in your capital plan, so there'll be a process that we have to re-justify all these to you, but I couldn't tell you from memory what vehicle it is and if we have an existing hot patch trailer or not.
Okay, thanks.
And the street maintenance levy, a $100,000 increase is planned for 2025. And that takes us up to a little over $500,000 in street maintenance. And then debt service levy, I estimated that payment at $111,000 for that 2024 A bond payment. That's just the general funds portion of that. That doesn't include the enterprise funds portion. So we talked a little bit about just some ideas to get your mind thinking about what are the priorities for 2025, because we will have a few more of these sessions. Implementation of strategic initiatives, which ones are the most important for you? Is it, tax rates or, communications, or what are those strategic initiatives? And then proactive planning for maintenance and repairs. We have a really good plan going right now. I talked a little bit about that staffing plan and the compensation model. We just wrapped up that class and comp study. How do we want to go about implementing that? And then the police contract and coverage, and then building capital for future projects. We're taking baby steps on that. Do we want to just keep doing that? And then the Southwest Prime funding level decisions. So I had this slide at the beginning. Again, we're going to really hit the pavement hard in the next few weeks on the budget with staff, and then council will assist along the way and make recommendations. But just want to hear it from you if you have any recommendations right now, or anything that you want to see removed from the budget or moved up, and then what you think is going to be our largest challenge as we hit the 2025 budget season.
All right, so let's go through this like we tend to, just like line by line, and I'll attack number one first. So what are council's 2025 budget priorities? I think it's, for me, I want to keep to that strategic plan tax rate parameters of 3%, no more than 3%. Lori, what's yours?
I agree with that. It's also, I feel like we might have to be open-minded about compensation and benefits, just with what's going on in the world, in the marketplace. So if it was needed, I could make that a priority. Second, to stay under that 3% of the tax.
Eric?
So I agree with both of those. I think we should plan for future projects. We had a long discussion about betting on the future of Carver and spending money on the southwest area for development, and I think we need to have a priority in place to be able to do those kind of things and to accommodate for expansion of the city. So that would be my focus.
Reed?
Yeah, I think my big concern is just keeping the levy at that 3%, right? I mean, we had a 5% last year. I don't want to be.
No, so this is for tax rate?
Tax
and
rate?
we've always kept it within the 3%
Oh, okay.
for tax rate.
Okay, that's good. Oh, this is my first budget thing. Too,
Yep,
so.
yep, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. Yeah, I mean, I think the street maintenance increases don't touch is right, but I mean, I'm really sensitive to the tax rate. I mean, I think everything else, we just got to really, really look at it. And if the growth is slowing a little bit, I notice we haven't had quite the increases with the building permit revenue and just the increase in land value, right, or increase in taxable market value. I can't remember the exact term. But I do think of my other top priority is the compensation. I mean, I think that just seeing the difficulty we've had in hiring, and then we just lost someone, right? I think that would be a top priority and something I'd go to bat for having an increase.
Christy? When we're looking at the general fund levy, and if we look at the history of that, especially 2024 was 13.75, and to me that seems very high. So I would like us to, as a council, make sure that we are, and staff, is to make sure that we are weighing some needs and wants. Wants are not bad, but they are wants. And 13.75 was a large increase, and I would hope to not see one as large this year. Everyone else has said, I agree with the other things that have been said here, so I think that for me, it's probably my largest one there is what that levy is going to look like and that percentage of increase this year.
All right. Lynn, I trust you'll ask questions and interrupt if you need to as we're doing this. Okay. So we'll just keep going. Number two, are there any specific programs or services you would like added or removed as part of the 2025 budget? Who wants to go first? Chrissy?
Should we go this way this time?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, let's go Chrissy.
All right, we'll go this way.
Read your own deck.
So then when we were looking at the slide before this one, where there was some budget priorities, one I wanted to talk about was the police contracting coverage. If we're going to look at including that, I haven't heard that we've been having a lack of response times or a lack of, that hasn't been something that has really come forward as a highlight that we need to add additional police coverage. One, I know we have a hard time with the sheriff's department being able to find the staff to provide that for us in the first place. I don't know that I think that is a large priority at this point for us. We just started that kind of new contract model. It seems to be working okay from what I've seen, and I haven't heard much to the contrary. So I guess for me, police contracting coverage of adding anything to it at this point isn't high on my priority list.
That's helpful.
And again, that's my opinion. And this one is, I guess, there's another status quo rather than add it or remove. When we're looking at the Southwest Prime funding, I know that there are some residents that we've heard from who have some issues with the fact that we don't have the airport service. I am on the same level of thinking that I was when we made the change to pull that out of our plan with them a number of years ago, is that I do not think that the city taxpayers as general should be paying for people's vacation rides to the airport. And I don't feel any differently about that today. I do not want to see that added back in. I do think there's a level of folks who don't understand that although the rider pays $5 or $6, that every taxpayer gets spread out the remainder $12 that it costs for that ride. It's not just $5 or $6. It costs additionally. And I don't think that that residents should be funding that type of trip as a whole. So I think when it comes to those added or removed, there's a couple of status quos there. So I'll be done.
Read.
Yeah, everything looks good except for I was just going to ask the same question about the deputy. Would that, right, because we switched to the new model sharing one with Victoria, is that cost part of that model? Would this be additional coverage?
So the hiring plan right now calls for adding a new deputy in 2025. So I've had a number of conversations with Commander Moline about it. But if that's like to Councilmember Mock's point of view, if the council's like, we're really not interested in that for next year, we can delay that. And I'm going to be bringing the draft hiring plan to you at your July 1st work session for review and comment. But we use all these plans, right, as ingredients in building blocks, but then we're relying on the council to say, well, to Councilmember Mock's example, I'm not hearing anything. I think we can push that back. It's a $125,000 cost, and so as you start looking at these priorities, it's $125,000 for the deputy. It's $100,000 more in street maintenance. It's as you go on down the line, and so developing what those priorities are. We don't, and I think we've had a good process for this. It sometimes is a challenge, but everything that you get from the team is what we believe is a need. We really push hard back on, and Callie and Tim do a great job along with Lynn and the other department heads. But we really take that seriously. We don't allow people to bring wish lists. If the council wants to hear wish lists,
No.
we can give that to you, and you can ask, hey, fire department come in. Well, don't start with the fire department.
Get flying fire trucks.
But we are really trying to transition. I think we've done that into like our needs are based on what we've included in that 10-year plan. Because the difference between needs and wants are based on someone's point of view. I mean, there are some people that don't think that we should add one more foot of trail in the community because they don't use them. Or street maintenance, we should invest any more because they live on a new street and that money's not gonna go into their neighborhood. And so just giving you like a perspective of we're in a position where we wanna give you that stuff, but we were relying on you to set the tone and the temperature for how it gets ranked and what doesn't, what isn't included and what is. And then just one little piece on this levy and tax rate, just
Yeah.
primarily for my Councilmember Welch's benefit, is the levy is the amount that after all the revenue that's collected in the general fund, so permits and licenses and state aids,
Okay.
that levy is the amount of tax revenue that you need to operate the city for that given year. The tax rate takes that levy amount and divides it by all the taxable market value in the community. So, yes, levy is a key indicator, but as we've talked about many times, like as our population grows or a growing family, your grocery bill is gonna get larger. And so like how many people are contributing to paying that grocery bill? And for the council to find that right amount, and we can build the budget in whatever way you think meets the needs of our collective community family, if you will. And so there's a lot of good feedback already, but that's kind of like how the levy,
That makes sense.
you know, and there's some, like, if the council said, hey, we don't want to see draft one of the levy that has more than a double-digit increase to the levy, no matter what the tax rate, no matter what the value increase is, you know, 10% or lower, like that's feedback that we will use to build you a better draft budget. And then we'll give you a list of the things that just missed, and you can continue that conversation of like, no, I'd rather have this in, but pull this out, or, you know what, I think we can go lower, or you know what, in order to get this done, let's make it 12% because I really want to see this project get done. So those are kind of examples of the discussion process that you might use throughout our budget process.
Brent, I just want
Go
to
ahead.
mention back to you is that, you know, you brought up the needs and wants, which was my statement, and I don't want to think that, I think you're bringing frivolous items forward to us. That is certainly not my intent, but it's for council too, to say, you know, Southwest Prime, are we seeing this as a need or a want, right? So it's not that any of this is frivolous, it's what are we capable and willing to be able to do with a town and city that's our size.
Yep, 100%.
Are you good, Reed?
Yeah, thank you.
Eric?
So I want to go back to Southwest Prime for just a moment. So I agree with Councilmember Mock's statement about the utilization of the dollars we have for Southwest Prime. I think we made that decision to preserve localized use. However, I think it's also important that we engage with Southwest, with the new CEO, and talk about what the new sales transit tax, how that could, if there's a way for Carver to become part of a taxation district, which is how Eden Prairie, how Chaska operate today. The reason they get unlimited use of Southwest Prime is everybody contributes a little bit to it. So let's find out what the cost is to Carver to do that in 2025. Let's find out if those new tax dollars can be used to facilitate that. I don't know the answer, but I think that's probably how we best look at the future of public transportation.
So Councilmember Persia, we can arrange for a presentation on the transit taxi district. It'll probably come from Met Transit with the Met Council. I do know for certain that transit taxing district, money just goes towards capital. So like the purchase of the buses. So like, I think it would be joining the transit taxing district and joining Southwest Transit under whatever requirements that board of directors and the CEO set for membership. I mean, they haven't had a city join since its inception. It's Chaska, Chan, and Eden Prairie. And so, you know, we could maybe do it in a two-part series where we talk about the transit taxing district and then engage Eric and the board on what it might look like to join, and then you can weigh the pros and cons of each.
Thank you for structuring that. All right.
Yeah, I have a few things with budget priorities. As far as the prime transportation, it's similar to what Councilmember Mock says, where it's hard to subsidize for,
And justify why.
and justify why. So maybe if there's some flexibility or just a middle ground, like each resident got, 2 trips to the airport a year. I have no idea if there's kind of a middle ground, because it seems so like black and white, like either we offer airport or we don't. So I don't know if there's a way to.
Yeah, we could facilitate a conversation with Eric Hansen, the CEO, and talk about Prime, and you can go over questions. In the past, they haven't, just the way their system operates, they're not structured to do that. That doesn't mean they couldn't pivot to something like that. But, I can take kind of
Not unlimited, but if there's, maybe it's just be creative on.
Right. I could give him a preview of kind of some of the things you're interested in, and then he can prepare remarks, and you can do a Q&A with him.
Yeah, so that, and then when it comes, I think that other than Steamboat Days, I don't think the second popular day in the community is the open house. I think it's Carver Cleanup Days.
Sorry, fire department.
But I don't know. I know it's gonna be a tough one. Well, this one probably costs more. But that I definitely want to support. But I'd be curious to know. I just probably need to be reminded: what did we budget? What did we actually pay? Did we go over or under? Is it are we handling it the best way? So that is one of them.
Are you talking for cleanup days?
Yes.
So we budgeted 30,000. We're still waiting for our actual bill from this year's event.
Okay. And then our partnership with Chaska for the community center. Are we in a contract for a couple of years yet, like 2027? So
Yeah, I think
I would want to
we're-
be reminded what we pay, but also
Sure.
I don't know that it's an item that we would make a movement on. So
So I think we're going to be in this either the second or third year of it, but you are allowed within. I think there's a 90-day notice. We can get you that information where you could say we're no longer.
okay.
We're going to get out of the contract.
And then maybe it's something too, where like, oh, we'd pay more if we knew we got more, or so. Yeah, I just don't want to go into it being like, yep, just do what we did last year. Let's do what we did last year. When it comes to those things that I mentioned, those are the only ones I have. Oh wait, I do have one more. Sorry. The public safety. I'm comfortable where we're at. I don't see a need to add, hours, only because it's not a concern. So I feel like that box is checked, like we're doing good, but if for some reason we were concerned about public safety, I would have said that right away as far as budget priorities, but. All right, now I'm done.
Okay, for me, programs or services, I agree with you, Christy, on Southwest Prime, especially the airport service. Lori, while you were talking, I just spitballed. If we gave everybody 2 airport rides, it would be $168,000 a year. That's
We could buy an airplane.
no. We couldn't even do a couple of trips. But even if you divide that in half,
Wowzers.
figure
Okay.
that there aren't too many toddlers taking trips to the airport. That's still a hefty budget impact. Let's see. For me, what I put down for this, staff pay for performance. You guys already had this a lot in your budget priorities, but this is one of the things that I would like to see absolutely included in the 2025 budget. I agree about police coverage, but if I can put you guys on the hot seat, as probably the folks who work as closely with our law enforcement partners, we'll hear from folks occasionally with speeding concerns, but totally putting you in our new police chief as our or if you guys want to stay in the back and just say, yes, we need coverage. No, we don't need more coverage, but.
There's been a couple times on some medical calls where it's taken like 15 minutes to get a police to come. And some of those medical calls have been sensitive, where we haven't been able to enter the structure until we have police coverage there. So
Yeah.
on like an overdose or something like that, our protocol is we stay outside until someone is there. So there's been numerous times where it's taken a while to get a deputy. Now, there might have been something else going on in the county, things like that, but there has been a couple situations where that has happened.
Okay, and the tricky part then is kind of peeling a layer of the onion back of is that's a staffing challenge from the sheriff's department?
Correct.
Or if we don't have enough coverage and there's just too much, like you said, other stuff going on in the county. And
Like,
people
I don't think it's a crime issue, it's just
Yeah,
that.
okay, okay, thank you, sorry for putting you in the hot seat. But you know, I am also not hearing beyond anecdotally what I've heard from you guys about some icky medicals where you need to get in and you guys work in a business of minutes and seconds counting. I also have some really big concerns just knowing what we're getting back from the sheriff's department in that they would be able to staff it and staff it reliably. So I want to continue discussing that. I don't know that I'm necessarily ready to cut that from my list. The other thing that I just had on my list as far as programs or services, I would like to see, we're in the second year of the organic waste event, and I think that that's enough to kind of get a baseline. Has that been popular? Do we only have 24 people out of 7,000 people who are participating in it? I think it's clearly not as popular as the borderline second or third famous Carver cleanup day, but I think that's something that we should be continually evaluating because when it gets to be popular, that won't be the time to cancel that one. So that's where my head's at, those things. Number 3, what would you consider Carver's largest budgeting challenge for 2025? Let's go round robin on this one. Eric.
Goodness. So I'm a little worried about housing starts. That's slowed down, and I think long term we all bet on Carver expanding, but I'm concerned about it in 2025. I've been surprised a couple of times this year with infrastructure failed, like filter media, not having to go out and replace that when we weren't expecting it. I think we've met the challenges, but I think we were planning on a pretty consistent level of housing starts, and I see there's some risk there.
Lori?
Maybe that's just perceived.
I don't know the answer. I feel like it's like look in the, crystal ball, but I feel confident that we're being informed of when we see something that could trend up or down or changes. So I'm comfortable with where we're at. If there was a concern that I had or a challenge that we should start looking at now, I'd bring it up.
Great. Christy?
I don't have much beyond what I've already said when it just comes to the tax levy and how we work through that, so I think I'll leave it there.
Great.
Actually, I'll jump on Eric's. Right, I've been the planning commission liaison, and even when I was on the planning commission, it just anecdotally seems like there's been a lot fewer projects we've been even in preliminary concepts. So I think we may have to start looking at if the growth is plateauing, at least temporarily, and what kind of assumptions we've maybe built in terms of capacity to spend and what we've projected. So maybe some costs go down, but how much did we project as in we'd have revenue for extra thing like the maintenance increase or the park dedication increase, just some of those things so that would be my big concern if we, just kind of overshot on some of those growth things and it just didn't have the capacity to spend those things that we think we need.
I think for me, it's going back to Brent's analogy of this growing family. Carver is still definitely in a growth phase, despite all of some of the concerns about housing starts. We are growing like a weed. What was it, 30% in the last 5 years that we've seen a 30% increase in our population. So with that and having, again, Brent's Brent's illustration of so many mouths to feed, it feels like there are so many needs. And, you know, kind of going back to the needs versus wants, to echo, you know, what Christy said, I remember back in the day, like Mike Webb talking about the relationship that's built between council and staff and how we trust that you guys are coming to us. Well, not speaking on behalf of everyone, I trust that you guys are coming to us with needs, and that the wants are set aside for the day that the city proverbially wins the lottery. But I know that there's a lot of stuff coming. I think it's great that we've got the 10-year financial plan, but it's also that, like, there's a lot of stuff in there. So it's a double-edged sword of knowing what's coming and then seeing what's coming. So for me, I think it's just that balancing of how much stuff we have coming and making smart financial decisions that are in the best interest of everybody in Carver. Last question. Any questions? I do not have any.
Courtney, I just wanted to follow up really quick with what you just said. And I think part of that is then we'll take needs and wants out of this conversation, but we do have to prioritize certain projects and things that we may not be fiscally able to do, even though we may like to do them now or want to do them now. So I think that that's the hard juggling act, and I think we all know that.
So I guess I just had again, my first procedural question. Do you typically, you'd come up the budget and roll up a number for the total, and then we kind of adjust down, or does the council give a number and you kind of shoot towards it? I guess, does that make sense?
I'll let Lynn weigh in.
Okay,
But if you remember, just anecdotally, if you remember like the truth and taxation presentation, we essentially kind of see that, where Lynn will go through and kind of tell us, this is what's in our preliminary budget. And then there's a lot of horse trading and discussion throughout the summer.
Yeah, I came in the very end when
and
all
when
that
we
was
said
decided.
it, we said, like, if it looks like we're not paying attention, it's not that we're not paying attention, but this is the 6th or 7th time we've seen this. So we go through it a lot. You will have plenty of opportunities to get very familiar with it. But also have a voice in saying, like, this doesn't feel right. What if we cut that number to this? Or I'd like to see more of this.
Yeah, and before council even sees it, we're cutting things too. Like, I give him a heart attack quick before. Yeah.
Oh, Lynn, thank you.
I think it started out.
I've given Brent a heart attack.
It's a low bar for me.
I think last year I started out over 20%, just with all the department, you know, just hard entering everything. So that's where the levy started at. Yeah.
Take a first estimate and you
Yep.
just
So
go from there.
Yep, and then we just kind of work our magic, and then we just keep cutting. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have any questions? Questions?
No.
Questions? Okay. Do you have what you need from us?
Great.
Okay. Yes, thank you. All right. Now to the city manager's report. Thanks for being flexible, Brent.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A couple of these items we've already hit, so I'll skip the flood preparations update. Just, I guess, one little piece is, you know, we'll do what we've typically done and update the community and give them line of sight on some things as we go along. But if you see a need or hear a need out there that's not being met, let us know, and we can tailor or attempt to tailor our communications related to that. Talked a little bit, or we have already talked about the public services technician 2 and mechanic. And Councilmember Welch kind of talked a little bit about so we have a vacancy. We have a public services utilities tech 2 that was offered a position in a neighboring city. So he's going to be leaving at the end of the month. And wanted to talk to the council. Our intention is to solicit for a public services technician 1. And the reason that we're concerned about that is if ultimately we have 3 people in that department, and this is a little bit exacerbated by that we don't have a public services director, which we're planning to go out for in the fall. But if we have either one of our techs leave, it's down to our superintendent. And we don't, if, like, let's say the tech 1 leaves and we're down to the superintendent and probably someone who just got their water and sewer license. And I think ultimately the community is better served if we have 2 utilities technician ones. I believe we can easily fund this through the vacancy in the public services director position, but it just gives us that deeper bench, similar to when we hired the utilities superintendent. But I think frankly, we have an easier time and have a deeper pool of candidates by applying or getting Tech 1 candidates over a Tech 2, just because the the wage starts at, like, I think it was $34.12 an hour. So it's about a $2 difference. I think the utilities tech is 32 something. So the cost difference, depending upon your point of view, I would offer that it's not significant, but I think the impact of the pool of candidates and our ability to have a deeper bench, all the technicians have, a baseline level of utilities knowledge that can help out, but the utilities technicians have, so this would have, minimum is water, a C water license and a C sanitary sewer. And so that just gives you, and then 5 years of experience in public utilities. It just, I think, provides us with more opportunities to service needs. As you can recall, when we've had these utilities issues or water issues, I would offer that we've barely gotten by on just kind of staffing to accommodate the needs of residents. Because one of the things that kind of in my interim role is kind of helping out in the public services. They do we're talking in some weeks close to 100 locates. And so it's a person going out there and locating the lines, and it has to be done in a certain amount of time. And then we have the testing. So I think it makes sense, but just wanted to check in with the council. If there are severe reservations or any reservations, I'd want to have a conversation and try to pivot out of that.
I don't have any concerns.
Yeah, you're telling us that's what you needed.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a great idea.
And then on public services technician 2, so we, as a part of the class and comp study, we're transitioning out of having the technician 3 position. We've went out for applications for that multiple times, and in the past have maybe gotten 2 to 3 applications. We can't find anybody who's interested in doing it that meets minimum qualifications, because we need people with CDLs to do this work for the snow plowing end of it. And so as part of the class and comp study, we're transitioning out of that 3 position and making all the Tech 2s. We only have actually 1 utilities Tech 3 person right now. The kind of unintended consequence to that is we've hired some Tech 2s that are now making more as new employees than our Tech 3 that is qualified for a Tech 2. So what I'm proposing is that we do an internal posting to promote this Tech 3 to a Tech 2, because it feels like if we wait 6 months, we could end up frankly losing him. And I just don't like the idea of somebody who's been with us, not that he's.
Can you not just promote him? Do we have to go through this internal posting?
You have to go through that process. We don't advertise for it at the League of Cities, but for instance, if somebody in another department, maybe Lynn wants to try her hand, or Brenda, they need to, and we're contractually obligated to do so through the collective bargaining agreement. So you'll see that posting for that. A lot of good comments related to the 10-year hiring plan. So I have a draft of that that's prepared for the council to review on the July 1st work session. And then Lynn and I hosted an opportunity for folks to make comments regarding that draft for staff that was interested. And so really feel like we're building a good plan. We've made some significant changes in some areas, but I do think there's room for more. And I think I would say, frankly, the hardest part of that plan is understanding sheriff's office coverage. Because I do think, to Chief Trimbow's point, there are times of need. And I've discussed this with Commander Woline, but we also haven't realized the full potential of our current model with the city of Victoria, because we have been short-staffed. So we really don't know what a combination of 6 deputies looks like yet. And so I do think there's a conversation to like, do you go to 7 if you don't know what 6 looks like? And there's just multiple points of view on that. I know the sheriff's office is geared up and they'd like to start. You know, we've made a kind of a precondition to start that we would only start the position at the earliest in July, so you're not having to take that whole bite of that 125,000. But maybe that's too early. And then what that does for, you know, there's a 2nd or an 8th deputy planned. Again, when I mean 8, not just for the city of Carver, but, you know, in essence, what that would do is, you know, Victoria's fully funding for, and we're fully funding for, and that's, I think, towards 2030. But we'll have both of the last year's hiring 10-year plan and then this year's proposed changes with a little narrative on the changes, and we'll have a good discussion on that. And then this kind of came up, this Chaska development project on the north side of Spring Creek Drive. We met with the city of Chaska. They don't have utilities close to this site. And so something that we thought was more imminent is probably several years away. So if that comes up a little sooner, then we'll re-engage the council on that. And then a note that I sent to the council, we had a resident complaint regarding a rooster in another part of the city, and so we investigated that. And to the residents' credit, like that, I think within 2 days they had relocated the rooster. They were great about it, but they did bring up, you know, as things happen sometimes, like what about people in other parts of the community that have chickens? And in talking to Dave and then Aaron Smith, you know, we don't have what I would call like a good ordinance regulating how they're used right now, or not used, but how they're maintained in a community. It's primarily based on zoning, exclusively based on zoning at this point of where you can have them. And even that is, so we have a zoning district that's residential unsewered, but even that is somewhat antiquated in that the residential unsewered district now does have sewer and water. That's the old Lenzen Edition, Dietrich, Kirchy Hill, etc. So Dave's going to be bringing a draft ordinance just for conversation purposes to July 1st work session. And Dave, if you have any other context to add, or if the council just has some curiosity questions related to it, now would be a great time to have that.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor and Council. And we did talk a little bit about that situation, and I looked at the code, and you know, one thing Carver does not have is any kind of an ordinance regulating the keeping of chickens, which is more and more common, especially in metropolitan areas and growing areas. And so we did talk about putting that draft together for the council's review and feedback, just to see what you think. And I think it'll be an interesting discussion. I mean, my plan is to use a fairly common middle of the road. It's not, you know, overly restrictive, but it's also not, you know, extremely casual either. Sort of a middle of the road ordinance that many communities have been adopting in the Twin Cities and in the region. So we'll see what folks think, and it'll be an interesting discussion in July.
I recall one of our planning commission meeting as part of when we were updating the zoning. We had talked. It was a fun meeting. We got to talk about how many chickens was the right number for people to have. So with this, did the council approve those, or is this a specific chicken?
As I understand it, that's still sort of out there as part of because the zoning code is being rewritten.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know that was brought up during that process.
Okay, that's fine.
This is going to come a little sooner. And these chicken ordinances actually don't belong in your zoning ordinance. Okay. It's more of a police powers, if you will, regulation that would go in your animal chapter.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it just provides some oversight and some restrictions for those who want to have chickens. Certainly there's a way to do that. You just want to follow the process. It might be a permitting or a licensing program that's very common. And we can, again, talk about that. And
okay, thanks.
But like an example of an issue, like roosters is probably a good example. You never know what you're going to talk about.
It sounds exciting.
But, you know, right now, we don't have a regulation on roosters, even though they, you know, could be considered by some like a kind of a nuisance animal for like noises. But if someone was in the proper zoning district, residential and sewer, they could theoretically have a rooster. And so like those are the types of decisions that you're gonna have to, I'm thinking of a pun, but I can't get what to.
And just, I mean,
Okay,
it's very.
we're good. Yeah.
And,
Okay, that's enough chicken talk for tonight.
we can avoid Brent's joke, but roosters are typically not allowed for obvious reasons. So that would be one of the main things that it includes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a very fun
We
meeting.
settled on 4.
I think it was 4 hens, yeah.
I think
4
you need to
hens,
have
0
more than
rooster.
4 hens, though, if you're going to raise them.
Well,
But I'm just going to say, but and most of the people who raise them, I know a number of people who do.
Weren't you the
Go
one who said
roosters.
we're waiting until July 1st to have more chicken talk?
Well, then we started with more chicken talk.
Okay.
We can stop the chicken talk.
Okay. Is that it?
I think we're
Thank
fine.
you. Okay, council updates. Reed, do you want to go first?
Yes, there's a planning commission coming up on Thursday here, so there's a couple of projects, I think finally finishing the Timber Creek, and there was one other one I forgot off the top of my head on the agenda. Also for the County Parks Commission, we have the Paradise Commons opening again that Commissioner Fahey mentioned on this Friday. It'll be a live band, food trucks, the county park service will be there. You can rent paddle boards and all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of, the county's been working on this project for a year plus with construction delays. So this is finally, it'll be open for the summer. They'll have rentals and stuff during the summer months for, again, on Lake Waconia. And then on the 25th, next Tuesday, is the Carver County Leaders. That's going to be again at the Paradise Commons. They're going to have the County Parks Director come and talk about some of the overall park projects and some of the bigger trail projects to try and connect between the cities and just see if we can get the cities in agreement on, plotting and planning so that when the county does want to put in a regional trail, they kind of have a general idea on some other park-related things. And that's all I have.
Christy?
We did not have an HPC meeting this month, so I have nothing to report for that. I've had a few questions about, I know we keep hearing about the median on County Road 11 and that it's, native plantings and things like that. I have noticed, a few people have noticed that although it was planted with certain natives, there are certainly invasive plants that are coming up in there. And what are we going to do, or how do we have a plan to rectify some of that? Because otherwise they will just take over, and it's not what we intended to have.
Yep, thanks for the question, Councilmember Mock. So the Public Services Department is talking about that, and they have been, and they have a process for maintaining it. It's literally just, walking through, in some cases pulling, in some cases pesticides that, would treat that. They are working also on a safe way to, you'll notice that there's like a maintenance curb along kind of the outside of the median. They're looking at a safe way to kind of trim that so like the vegetation doesn't kind of fall over the curb. But there's, I think it's called like a crash truck that the county has. You basically want to make sure that if someone isn't paying attention, that they go into the back of this vehicle rather than someone who's maybe on a mower, et cetera. So I know Paul is keenly aware of it, and they're working out strategies, but it's something that they're paying a lot of attention to.
Okay. I'd also like to offer up that there is a group of volunteers of Carver Scott Master Gardeners that are available to volunteer to would either be planting or help possibly weeding, things like that. If the city should come along that they're looking for some extra help along County Road 11. That's all I have.
Mark?
I don't have any updates.
No updates.
Oh, always comes so quick, and I'm not quite ready for
You're ready,
it.
Courtney.
Sorry. Darn it. Wow. I am struggling to find my notes here. Here we go. Okay. Let's see. Going back 2 weeks, on June 4th, Brent and I went up to Carver Elementary on the last day of school. Imagine what that was like. And participated in the all-staff assembly. At the end of it, they had a really cool event. Like, each grade has their own cheer. It's louder than you can ever imagine. There's a setting on your Apple Watch that lets you know when you're in loud environments, and it was like, letting me know. But we were there to help recognize Ryan Finke, who is leaving Carver Elementary to take a new role as a principal at a school in the Dominican Republic in the fall. So it was really cool. We gave him a Carver book and one of the pieces of the water tower that has the Carver imprint in it. So he was very appreciative, and that was fun. June 7th, I, as part of my role on the League of Minnesota Cities board, I'm also on the building company board. So we had that meeting. It's relevant to us because if you guys go to St. Paul and park at the League and go through that building, a few years ago they did a remodeling project on floors 1 and 2, and now they're looking at expanding that, continuing that project, and doing the remodeling project on floors 3 and 4. June 11th was the first farmers market of the season. The first week was rained out, and it's not looking good for tomorrow. But I think you guys all know how much I like the farmers market. It was really good to see a good turnout of folks for the first week of the season.
How many vendors do you think they had?
There were 2 or 3 food vendors, which was good. I would say that they probably had about a dozen vendors.
Okay.
New this year, the county was there, and they are going to, they were trying to sign up the vendors for the SNAP program, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, so that folks who qualify for that can use those benefits to get honey and fresh veggies and everything else that's available at the farmers market in terms of food stuff. So that was cool to see. But yeah, good turnout.
Good.
Let's see. And then last but not least, last Friday we had a kind of off the schedule League of Minnesota Cities board meeting to talk about the Grant Navigator program. What that does is that provides small cities who don't have the resources to fill out an application and need to hire a consultant, gives them up to $5,000 to help offset those costs. So something, you know, we've got great staff, we've had really good luck with our grants, but something for probably cities our size and smaller who don't have those resources. The program piloted a few years ago. It's going really well, but now the League of Minnesota Cities is getting a $200,000 grant from the McKnight Foundation, which is a pretty big deal and something we're pretty proud of. So I think that is it. Maybe just a friendly reminder that Wednesday is Juneteenth and city offices will be closed because it's a holiday. That's all I had. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Got a motion by Councilmember Welsh.
I'll second.
And a second by Councilmember Sayre. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Good evening.